Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast, where Kyle Curtin takes you on an extraordinary journey alongside renowned multifamily real estate experts from every corner of the United States. We teach you how to harness the power of real estate investing and witness the transformation of your wealth building strategy. Let's create wealth together.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kyle from Creating Wealth. Happy freaking Wednesday. Just wanted to share a quick little tip for you guys about a story that I heard from a friend of mine recently. So this individual, he was in a W-2, normal 40-hour-a-week job and that kind of thing. And he was in a trade. And he had the option to essentially move to a separate, type of position that was a bit more white collar, in exchange for being able to basically make a little bit more money, And the thing is when it came to like the blue collar side of the spectrum, that the pay cycle, or the pay scale rather, was capped off. So, he was basically at like the top of his income threshold, pretty young dude. And, so we figured that this was the right move, right? And essentially what had happened, or what he had realized when he switched positions, he spent like a few weeks over in the new position. And he was telling me the other day that he, was trying to get his old position back. And basically something to keep in mind, long story short, guys, is because he's completely, switched professions to chase, a little bit more money to, feed into other real estate activities, outside of work and save up for down payments faster and that type of thing. That part makes a lot of sense, right? If your income's capped off, go to a place where your income isn't, especially if you're going to have a W-2 job for, the next X amount of year, maybe like a few years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever your plan might be. It makes a lot of sense, right? But something else that you have to keep in mind that he was telling me is that you have to remember the time dynamic, the mental exhaustion, or mental/physical, depending on, which way that you could be going, in that dynamic. And basically the toll or the cost that could take, or the cost that could be in place there from the, from what you might have had originally, So basically, like, what I'm doing a horrible job explaining is it might make sense if you're capped off in some sort of way, or, your boss doesn't give a lot of, raises, or whatever the situation might be, you know what I mean? It might make a lot of sense to jump jobs, maybe get a little bit of a bump in pay, or a lot, depending on what that is. But something that I want to really point out to you, real estate investors, real estate agents as well, lenders, other folks that are growing their 1099 businesses, is because you're chasing another few dollars or less or more, with that, obviously, could come a whole different dynamic, introduce a whole new learning curve to what you're doing. And, it might not necessarily be worth it in terms of like the flexibility and that kind of thing. It's kind of like the devil, if you guys have ever heard that phrase before, like what you have, like, definitely not to say settle in what you have, but this is for the folks that are, trying to grow these businesses on the side, and real estate is the top thing that matters. The top thing that they're trying to build, buy more buildings, work with more clients, etc. And the W-2 is just kind of something to do, to bring in money, to be lendable, to continue to fund those activities, So yeah, it's one of those things, like, obviously the money component is a big one. If you have to be at your W-2 job in some sort of capacity for X amount of time, yeah, it makes sense to make the most money that you can from it on a per hour basis, right? Or a salaried basis. But what you have to keep in mind is what might come with that is more mental exhaustion that will then, linger into your real estate activities after work, and especially if it's like you're doing longer days or different schedule or whatever, like you're going to be beat potentially. You potentially could be beat, and going to the gym as well and that type of thing as well. But yeah, so that's pretty much all I kind of wanted to share, guys, because he went through, thought long and hard about jumping positions, like drastically, kind of like jumping career paths in a way, expecting that the income and everything is going to make it work. And he was always, more of a, work with your hands, like blue collar-esque, type of individual, So jumping into a more white collar position definitely had its pros and cons, and he didn't end up liking it. And the mental, exhaustion and the learning curve and in a completely different environment was enough to basically not to expose that the small income bump that he gained from that directly wasn't justified, because he might have been making another, tiny amount of money per hour, which is great, and continue to open up the scale for income to keep growing. He closed off on, the part of the mental exhaustion, which after work, after a long day of doing something completely different, jumping into a new trade, learning all the, the facets of that, ended up, seeping into his real estate and, the things that really mattered. And, it wasn't worth it anymore. Because he didn't necessarily, his flexibility was a lot more limited than it was prior. And then, like I said, the mental exhaustion after work of just being drained from the day, and trying to get real estate stuff going and, talking to clients and that type of thing was definitely a pretty big drain on him, so he ended up switching back over, and he's, trying to kind of work that out and see if things pan out, which I really, hope the best for him with that. But I thought it was a really incredible lesson to keep in mind is like, as it, popular of a conversation as it is, to just worry about the money factor, you want to worry about, the mental factor, the time factor as well. For all of you folks that are in W-2 jobs, hopefully making a pretty decent amount of money, but, have real estate that they're trying to eventually, someday make their full-time gig, and, kind of navigating that. But yeah, I would love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on this. I thought this was incredibly interesting, and I just wanted to share a quick little tip for you guys, and kind of hear your thoughts on this and moves that you've made in the past that worked, that haven't worked, what you thought was going to happen. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I'd love to hear, in the comments below, or on Facebook, in the Creating Wealth Together Facebook group. Definitely feel free to plop any questions and, stories and that type of thing in there. But, until the next one, my friends, thank you very, very much. And I'll talk to you super shortly. Alrighty. Goodbye.
That's a wrap for today's episode. We want to thank you for being a valued listener of the Creating Wealth Podcast. Make sure to visit www.creatingwealth.com to connect with us. Dive into our ever-expanding library of informative blogs and explore a wide range of additional valuable resources. Stay tuned for our next episode as we continue to create wealth together.